Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for being here. I am going to invite Yael Segelman to join the live, and we are going to be talking all about doulas today. I'm really excited for this conversation because it's been circling for a while in my head, and I think it's going to be who is expecting now or thinking about, the future. So it should be really informative. Okay, so I see Yael joined. So just give her a second. So I haven't done a live in a long time. Let's see. Here we go. Accept. Hey, to those who are joining. Hi, Mom. I'm trying to let Yael in, but it's not working. Hold on. Accept. Gotta love Instagram. Hold on, guys. All right, let's just give this a second. Yael, I requested. Is it showing up? Ugh, it says she can't join. This is so frustrating. Let's try this again. Hey, Rachel. There we go. Hey, nice outfit.
I know, like this is the birth worker uniform, isn't it?
How are you?
Thank God. Just, pardon the red sniffly nose. I have the
Oh.
cold that the whole entire world has. So
I'm so sorry.
I
It's
know.
really tough. I hope you feel better.
I know your kids had it, right? How are they doing?
So far, good. Everyone's playing hard. I'm not saying anything. Not saying anything.
Like once a kindergartner gets it, like the parents, everyone, but
Totally.
thank God.
Totally. So I'm really excited for this conversation. I feel like this has been something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and then
It's a great idea. I'm glad you're doing it.
had a baby in the middle, and here we are. Yeah, I think it'll be really informative. So let me just give a quick intro, and then I want you to introduce yourself to anyone joining. So hi, I'm Lauren Seidman. I am a Lamaze certified childbirth educator, and I'm also I don't know what to call myself, doula in training. I'm working on my certification.
Yeah, I mean, you're a doula. Yeah,
I'm
you're
a doula. I've attended a handful of births as a doula, but I'm working on getting certified. So there's that also. I'm a mom of 4 little ones, thank God. And just to be completely upfront and transparent, I did have a doula for all of my births. So I do have that perspective coming in. But as Yael and I will talk about, we're not trying to convince anyone, but I just want to be open about my own personal experiences and possible biases towards this topic. So speaking of awesome doulas, can you please introduce yourself?
Awesome. Thank you. So I am Yael Segelman. I am a doula. I've been a doula for about 1.5 years now. I left my old job, my 9 to 5. I was like, you know what, let's do something a little more insane. And now we have like a 2 a.m. to 6 p.m. I don't know what it is, but thank God it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. And like you said, that we're really giving a variety of opinions here. You did have a doula. I have 2 children. I did not have a doula.
Oh, interesting.
I became a doula afterwards.
Very interesting.
Spoiler alert, because I felt like it wasn't that euphoric experience that, people describe. They weren't bad experiences.
Right.
But I was just like, something was missing, and that kind of a whole bunch of reasons kind of just sparked me and rolled me into doing this.
Wow, that's so interesting. Do you think if you were going to go back in time knowing what you know now, you would have hired a doula?
Okay, everything about my first would have been different. For starters, I would
join the club.
Tried to have met you, tried to have made you quit your job and become a childbirth educator earlier. Because honestly, as much as I personally think that a doula is important, not that it's like necessary, but it's important, education is huge. And like, I took this like quick little crash course, that just goes through some stuff. I wound up being induced. My little course didn't cover any of that, didn't know what to expect. And it was just like one thing after another. I'm like, guys, what's going on? This isn't what they described.
Right.
So yeah, there's, yeah. Think, like I said, thank God it was
Hindsight's
good.
2020.
Exactly.
Just moving
All right.
forward.
I thought I was so prepared. I took my 1.5 hour class. Like I knew everything.
Definitely. No, the childbirth education and the doula really like go hands in hand. Like if someone is going, we'll talk about this, how much a doula costs, right? So if you're going to make the investment and hire a doula, I really think you're going to get the most out of that relationship if you've actually done some education beforehand, because it's, you don't know what you don't know, and a doula can really help you, in carrying out your preferences. But how are you going to know what your preferences are if you've never taken
It's right. It's funny. I say, like, when clients call me and say, like, should I also take a child education course? I say, like, this is what it is that as a doula, I am your tutor. Like, I'll be there with you, and as things are coming up, I'll go through it with you.
Right.
But you'll be able to have so many preferences and just so many opinions on different things that may be happening that you wouldn't have known about beforehand.
Totally. And like in the moment, it's not the time to start like weighing the pros and cons of like different options. You sort of have to have an idea going in.
Especially if you're unmedicated, it's not the time.
Yes, not the time.
For sure.
Yeah, I think not the time. You're just not. You should. I want everyone.
You need to be in your zone.
Focus on having your baby.
Yeah, you need to be in your zone. You don't want to be learning that. Right. You can.
100%. 100%. I'm like unmedicated for sure, but epidural or not, like it's just, this is like your day. Like you're meeting your baby. Like we don't need to start like, wait, what are the benefits and risks of this? Like your doula is there to remind you. So anyway, can you tell us a little bit about what a doula does and what the scope of practice is for a doula?
For sure. Okay, so to start with, a doula is nothing medical. So we don't do any type of blood pressure exams. And as much as we're familiar with all the medical stuff going on, and like unofficially we could read a tracing, how you have like, the heart rate and the fetal heart rate and, contraction monitors. So, we know what they mean. We're never going to, tell you our interpretation of it, because that's not our role. We're not medical. You have your nurses, you have your providers for that. But we offer a different type of support that complements the medical side of what's already being given to you. So we do some physical support. So, say your provider comes in and says it's time to start Pitocin, and you say, wait, no, like I don't want to start Pitocin. It's like, okay, we're going to do an oxytocin boost, and then like physical massage while we get that peanut ball on you, and try to get the baby to come down. So a lot of just like physical mechanical tricks, I guess we'll say. And we also just have a lot of tips. Like I had shared on my account once, and like I got so much feedback on it. How you get those shakes after the epidural or like in transition. And like if you say to your nurse, like, oh my gosh, like I have the shakes, they say, oh, I know, it's normal, it's a part of it. Okay, that's true. But what can we do about it? It's like a doula knows kind of what to do about it, and we can get you more comfortable. So yes, your nurse has to be doing their medical stuff and the charting at that point, especially if you're in transition. They've got the whole table to set up. They're busy. They're not your emotional support person. So we also act, besides for the physical stuff, the emotional side, helping you make decisions, helping you come up with what you're feeling, expressing what you're feeling. Sometimes a doctor comes in and then that white coat syndrome kicks in, and they say, we want to do this. And you say, okay, even though like the first thing that's going off in your mind is, I don't want this. This is not the plan. So, we help you with that.
I feel like sometimes there's this temptation to, you feel like you're on a train and you can't get off.
Oh, yes.
And I think the one awesome thing that a doula can do is help just slow things down so that, no matter what decision you're going to come to, you can feel more confident about that.
Yeah. It's like if your provider comes in to suggest something, and then like I see that your face kind of looks a little bit uncomfortable, like I'll say, like, hey,
did you have questions,
Lauren, you look very confused. Do you have any questions about this procedure? And just like help get that going when really you're kind of just like a deer in the headlights, like, wait, I wasn't expecting this. What do I do? What do I say? Okay, he's telling me that I should do this. Maybe that means that I have to. And like, let's turn it into a conversation. Let's let you understand what's happening. Even if you do wind up agreeing to it, let's help you understand what's going on and what might come next.
Totally. You're adding that, like, I feel like there's this aspect of like humanizing, I guess that's maybe not the right word, but like humanizing
the right word, though.
Or like, because it's, I try to explain in my classes that when you walk into a hospital, like I definitely thought this going to my first birth, like they're not like rolling the red carpet out for you, you know?
They should. They
It's not
should.
like, yeah, you're having your baby. Like you're walking into a busy
Yeah.
hospital that is looking at people in labor all day, every day, and it just can
It
lose
becomes
that
routine to
touchy.
them.
Becomes routine, and like
Yeah.
it loses that like, you know, more like touchy feely emotional aspect. And it's not a personal attack on any providers. It's not, you know,
It's a
it
business.
just is what it is,
Hospitals
you
are a
know?
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
a
the way
doula,
it
I feel like
works.
the
It's not bad.
doula has this ability to like come in and sort of reinstate that feeling of like you're being seen and cared for,
Yeah.
even in this environment that doesn't
For
really
sure.
make it
Yeah,
feasible for other people, like
yeah,
for the
that's
people working there
definitely
doula
our
for them.
goal. For
What
sure.
what would you say to someone who's like, well, actually, let me hold that thought for a second. I want to talk about doula nurses, you know, the whole like dynamic there, but let's just like take a step back. Um, you know, before, you know, when someone's even like choosing a doula or thinking about hiring a doula, in your experience, what are some of the things that have made you be a really good fit for your client? And have you seen anything that made you, you know, question if it was the best fit? You know, can you share with us like some questions that you think might be helpful for people to ask, or
Yeah,
conversations
for
for people to
sure.
have beforehand to make sure like everyone's on the same page? You know, not every doula is the same, right? Everyone's going to have like their own style. So what are
Mhm.
some of the things you think are important to like discuss up front, or questions to ask up front?
Yeah. So I think the one very popular question that varies, you know, based on the style of the doula or just the logistics, is if you labor at home
Oh,
with the client or if you meet them at the hospital, if it's a
yeah,
hospital birth.
right.
So, you know, if someone's planning on going unmedicated, then ideally you want to labor at home as long as possible, just because you'll be a lot more comfortable. No one's poking you with anything and
Yeah,
strapping you to stuff. You know, you can go in your shower. It's
right.
just a very different and easier experience at home.
Yeah,
So, you know, say someone from Brooklyn calls me. I live in Queens, and they're asking me if I labor at home. So in theory, I do, but let's talk about the logistics of Brooklyn and Queens. If you're
right.
like very much in labor and like you think that maybe you're like in transition, it could take me 40 minutes to get to you, if not more
Right.
sometimes.
Right. Right.
Then, you know, even if we're really vibing, you might be better off with a local Brooklyn doula.
Okay, so like logistics.
Yeah, so like, you know, logistics of just, does this make sense for you? Do you want your
Okay.
doula to be meeting you at home? Do you want to labor together? How long is it
Yeah.
going to take for your doula to even get to your hospital?
Yeah. And
You
is
know?
that typical for a doula to meet you at home and labor at home, or is it more typical to meet at the hospital? My own experience,
So,
I always met my doula at the hospital.
yeah, so
And
the hospital is more
yeah.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hospital definitely is more common. And I think the reason mainly why is because we have to keep in mind this could take 24 hours. If your doula is awake and working for 24 hours, she will be useless at the end of that time bracket. She will not be able to.
She's not going to be helpful
do
at the
counter
hardest part.
pressure where you need.
Right.
Exactly. And so she may have to call in a backup at that point.
Yeah.
So you don't want the clock to start too early. So once you're in a hospital and you're admitted, being admitted by the hospital means that, like, according to everyone's, you know, opinion, you're in labor, you know, probably active labor. Whereas someone who's in that early stage might not really need physical in-home support, whereas their doula might be available by phone and we can make different suggestions. And, you know, beforehand we'll discuss, you know, okay, maybe get a peanut ball, something that, you know, you'll have an easier time coping with at home, get some heating packs. And we can do kind of like a virtual support at home. And then like the time clock of a doula starting to be physically exhausted. Start yet. Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what about for someone who's getting
induced? Exactly, right. But
like they get admitted to the hospital from like minute zero. So like what do you do then? You just provide that like phone support over like while they're in the hospital?
Available, you know, for sure available by phone support. It also kind of depends on how they're being induced. There are some methods that, you know, you're more uncomfortable sooner than others. If they're starting Pitocin right away, then like that doula needs to be ready to leave the house any minute. If the person's starting at 0%, you know, like zero centimeters dilated, you know, they would start with Cervidil or
So the bill,
Cytotec,
yeah,
something
right,
that before they're even going to start contractions,
right,
they just want to start getting the cervix ready. So while
right,
that could be uncomfortable, just like annoying that you have to maybe stay in bed if they're saying that,
right.
you're not in pain and you don't need that physical
Do a very
support. So for
yeah.
sure, virtual support at that point should be
Okay.
sufficient.
Okay. So typically, their doula, the expectation, generally speaking, your doula will meet you at the hospital unless you've discussed otherwise. And if you want them to
Exactly.
labor with you at home, then you're better off hiring someone that lives close
Right.
by to you.
Probably
Is
someone
there,
local.
is, yeah,
Also, they could come and then, like help you get
they
comfortable
could
and then
come
go
and
to dinner
go.
and then go back
Yeah,
home and then,
they could
spend 4
leave.
hours
Yeah,
apart while, the doula prepares dinner for tomorrow for her kids.
for sure,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, you
So,
have a little more
the
flexibility.
logistic part. Yeah. The logistic part of
Okay,
just like what you want.
that makes
That's
sense. And what about like style? Like, what do you think about
um,
trying to get a good read on someone's style?
so
And
yeah, look, every doula I think comes from a different place. Maybe someone had something traumatic happen to them during birth, and that's why they became a doula and they want to save people from that. Maybe some people learned, this and just feel very strongly and passionately about this, and everyone should do this. So, when you have that, that initial conversation with a potential doula, you know, talk about your own birth plan. Do you want an epidural? Do you not want an epidural? There are
yeah,
some doulas who know if you're working with me, you do not have an epidural. That may not be the right fit for you. So,
right.
you want to just like get
Right.
some of that stuff out of the way for sure.
Yeah.
Just
And when you say working with me, just to be clear, you don't mean you. Yeah. You
right,
mean
not you.
a
Yeah,
potential
yeah.
doula might only
Right,
prefer to work with
right. You
clients that are going unmedicated.
exactly like you
Okay,
really want to find a doula who will support you and whatever you are choosing.
for sure. Mm-hmm.
So that's a style.
Yeah.
There might be
Right.
some things that aren't like red flags, but to you
Right.
just like, oh, that's not what I'm really envisioning for myself. Like that doesn't
Right.
sound
For
so my
sure.
style. And
Yeah.
then
I just want to say one thing is
mhm,
that also like this is something that I was just discussing with a client, a student in my class. We were discussing doulas, and she said, I really want someone who's more like logical and like fact based versus more like spiritual and like fluffy. And like
yeah.
I know, like we know doulas, and like we
I
know a
was
lot of
gonna say
doulas. I
like
can think of people that go in each of those categories, and they're all amazing, but they're different.
I know
And
a
so I
lot of
think
our
that was a
like birth
great thing
crew
to say.
overlap, so like I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
no, and
yeah.
everyone's like meeting everyone's amazing, and like the people that are more like the spiritual type
Yeah.
and that are like so strong in that area, and that could be a great fit for someone who really thrives with that energy, and for
Mhm.
someone who's like just give me the facts, that could be really
Right.
frustrating for both
And look,
people,
as a doula, I don't want a client who's not the right fit. I
fit
want
for you,
her to have
right?
what's best for her, and it's
Yeah,
gonna make the whole, make the job easier and funner for me
yeah,
if it's a good fit. So at the
definitely.
end of consults, I've given, potential clients other doulas numbers and just said like,
Yeah,
I'll hold your date for a few weeks, while you decide if you want to work together. I think in the
right,
meantime,
right.
so and so and so and so might be up your alley, particularly X, Y, and Z. I think
Uh-huh.
speak with them. Either way, keep me posted. Let me know if I can open your due date back up, or if you'd like to work together. I'd be happy
Right.
to. But just
Yeah,
let them know what those other options are, because it's
for
really
sure.
for everyone's benefits if it's just like a really good match.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. No, I think that's a great point. How much well, we could probably both answer this, but in terms of cost, that I feel like is also a big factor
For
into
sure.
making someone's decision. We're based in the New York area, but I know that in different places, the price ranges will be different.
Well, I mean, even in New York, like,
Yeah, there's a huge
the price
range.
range is surprising.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, what do you
yeah.
see like in terms of, well, actually, I'll ask you, but I just want to give like a little like preface. So just generally speaking, from what I've seen is that, doulas that are newer, more inexperienced are going to have a lower rate. So that could be like a potentially good way to have a doula there that's within your budget if you don't have such a high budget for it.
Mhm.
The range that I've seen like in New York is like, I don't know, anywhere from high like
Yeah.
1,000 to like 3,000.
You know something? I think that there's like a big chunk of like 600 to 800.
Right, there could be like 600 to 800
Yeah.
also.
I
Totally.
think mostly like in Brooklyn. Maybe because there are so many doulas there.
Right.
I'm not so sure,
It really
but
depends. Like, so
yeah,
let's say 600 to 3,000, right?
that's the
But
range I was thinking.
starting,
Yeah,
I mean, for someone who's working on their certification, I don't know, like I'm working on my certification. I'm a little different because like I'm a childbirth educator also. I'm not
you're
like
already, yeah,
brand
your
new.
resume was already bigger than mine was when I was already considering myself an experienced doula. So
I don't have a rate right now for birth doula work, but the handful of clients that I did do, it was a lower rate because I'm newer and I just want the experience. So,
right.
you could get lucky and like, I want to say like someone who's newer and has quote unquote only been to 3 births, let's say, that's the amount that you need to get certified. That's, if this is your first baby, that's 3 more births than you've been to. So like, just think about that. It's
Yeah.
not their first rodeo and it is yours. I don't know. What do you have to say about like
So, oh my gosh, I've got
pricing and
tons to say.
cost, and
Tons,
is there
yeah.
flexibility? Like, what do you think about that
So
from like
tons to say about the price thing. For starters, so like you just mentioned, using like a newer doula who's cheaper. I think that every mom should feel confident using a newer doula.
yeah.
If that option presents itself to them. So the way it works with most doula organizations is you take your training class.
Yeah.
And now you're a trained doula.
Right.
Congratulations.
Right.
The doula business is not regulated by any organization, any medical anything. You don't even have to be trained to
Right.
be able to call yourself and work as a doula.
That's right.
So okay, now that you've got your training, what if you want to be a certified doula? So
Right.
a lot of the organizations, they'll give you the reading list, and then you have to take a breastfeeding course. You have to take a business course and write an essay and
That's
convince
me
the
right
OB
now.
that doulas are necessary and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the requirements, at least for the organization that I certified through, was doing 3 births and then kind of just doing some documentation about them afterwards. What skills did you use? Just a couple sheets just going through what happened at those births, as well as having the mom do an evaluation on you.
Uh-huh.
So part of the certifying process was to do births. So I had the complete confidence to do births. I was so grateful for the moms who had their confidence in me.
Right.
But I did it for like about each one. I did a little bit more, but my very first one was free. Right. And then,
I also did
a third of what my now price was, and then half of what my now price was, and then $200. And, you build your way up.
You build up.
So if money is a constraint, and it stinks that doulas aren't really covered by insurance, because we make your insurance bill smaller to begin with, but no, we can't actually do something that makes sense. So it is an added expense.
Right.
You get what you pay for sure. It's an investment. This is your birth experience. This is the day you're becoming a mother, or the day you're having another child. This is a momentous occasion. Totally. And we even take pictures for you so that you have it documented. But for sure, if price is something on your mind, know that that's an option. How do you find these cheaper doulas? You can certainly post in, Facebook group, WhatsApp chats, if anyone has a friend who's a recently trained doula on the newer end. Right. I think maybe some doulas would be insulted by it. I don't think that I am, maybe because I'm still like a freshly certified doula. So like I was just, recently there. But I am not offended if someone says to me that they're looking for a cheaper option. And I say, great. Like we have like a network of doulas. We're all in touch with each other. And newer doulas are always, joining, our WhatsApp chats and everything, looking to gain experience. And, I've met some of them for coffee and just tried to get to know them and understand their style, and obviously help them out, because
they're looking for the experience.
Right. If you're going to go to a birth and it's your first time, there's some stuff that you should know, and I'm happy to share that. So, which is also why you should feel confident using a doula who's either never done a birth or done 1 or 2, because they have people that they can ask their questions to, and people who have, told them some of the secrets and how to get the nurses all like happy lovey-dovey. And I'll happily give people their phone numbers. I don't consider it taking business away from myself, because I don't want you to do something that you can't afford. And also, Baruch Hashem, like there are lots of babies. So if someone else is a better doula for you, let them be your doula.
Totally.
And I will find a good match for me.
100%. We could definitely move on from this like cost conversation. Hold on, someone put out a question. I can't say it right now. But also like, if cost is a concern, which I know I've just heard a few times, more than a few times, you know, wow, it's so expensive. And it is expensive. And I also just want to maybe give a little, I don't know what the word is, muster here, which is like, you know, what what's on your baby registry that also costs $1,000? Like what other gifts are you getting? You know,
Right.
like if you're buying a DONA, that's $500. If you're buying up a baby Vista, that's $1,000. So your
Right.
baby does not care how they're getting in and out of the car. Your baby does not care if you're pushing them in a $70 stroller from Target or an up a baby, but you care how your birth experience goes, you know,
For
and
sure.
a doula can make a massive difference in that. So I would also invite people to consider the possibility of, you know, maybe asking for that as a gift. And
I've had that. I've had
I've
clients
seen
who,
mothers, you know, gift this
yeah,
to their daughters, or like if someone was saying like, if I had a friend who really wanted a doula and like 5 friends chipped in to like help cover half the cost of her doula or
yeah.
something,
I've had
like
friends whose
I would
parents were
be
sponsoring me.
thrilled
Yeah,
to do that as a baby gift. Do you know what I mean?
sure.
So I think we just need to
Yeah,
be a little bit more creative about, you know, the expense thing, because like, just to put in perspective, you know, a lot of people are spending that amount of money on other things, and it just
right.
comes down to like how much you value this service, which maybe
Mm-hmm.
you don't, but you know, I think that, and that's fine, but
Yeah,
people that really can benefit from it, I think it's just
for
important to
sure.
like think about that
Right.
a little more
Yeah.
critically.
I was gonna say, like,
Yeah.
also, like, talk to your doula. If cost is a thing, like, yes, I said there's the option where, you know, I can give you other people's phone numbers. Say you do want me. It's not like I'm gonna say like I'm the best or anything,
Right.
but you know, I
You're pretty
if someone's friend used me, they want to
right.
use me too. They've heard
Right.
about me. Their friend, if their friend is super happy,
Yeah.
they want copy paste, so they want me.
Yeah.
But say I'm a little bit out of their budget,
Right.
so talk to me about it. You know,
Right.
because
There
if
might be
it's a month,
flexibility.
yeah, look, if it's a month that's, you know, coming up soon and I know that I don't have such a busy month, I only have a couple clients and, you know, I don't mind taking a discounted rate. Um, you know, it could be I maybe won't know the exact price that I can give you until after the birth. You know, what if it is one of
Right.
those 2 days, you know, where I have to hire a
Right.
babysitter and do this,
Right.
and then if
Right.
it goes
Right.
into a Shabbos, and then I have a $100 Uber bill on top of it. You know,
Yeah.
I might not know the best price I can give you, but if you trust me to give you the best price
Yeah.
afterwards, then, you know, maybe
That's
that's a
interesting.
solution. But then,
Right.
like you said, also think about how I'm going to feel as a doula, where if I'm leaving my family for, you know, 12
Yeah.
to 16 hours
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
value my time, and
Yeah.
here you are with your, you know, you're getting your bugaboo, and, you know, thank God you've secured like a really great night nurse for, you know, the first 3 weeks,
Yeah.
but you want a discounted rate on your
Right.
doula.
No.
How do I
How's that
feel in
make you
terms of how
feel?
I'm valued and
Yeah.
appreciated in the room? So you have to
Totally.
think about that aspect, but there's
100%.
absolutely no shame in speaking to your doula about price and what options they have for you, because like, I get it. My
For
first and
sure.
foremost goal is for women to have support. It does take a
Definitely.
financial toll on me. This is my job. And, you know,
Definitely.
I do have to have a babysitter and lots and lots of
Definitely.
takeout. There's a lot of takeout involved, but
No, it takes a lot. And just to also add on to what you're saying, Yael, like I want people to understand that and I really appreciated this much more after I went to the birth, like my stint in April. I went to 4 births in like, I
we
think
split a
three.
birth. That was a fun one.
Yeah, we split a birth. That was really fun. I went to, I think, 4 births in like a 3.5 week period while I was like 30 weeks pregnant, like plus or minus.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. So that made me really realize like what it takes to be a doula, like firsthand, and also like appreciating my doulas way more. Like you are on call. Like, so basically when you hire a doula, you're on call for approximately 38 weeks till 42 weeks, right? Give or take. There might be variation based on the
Yeah,
doula, but
you have your
generally
baby. If it's 45 weeks, I'm yours. Yeah.
that's generally the rule. So this person is planning their life around the possibility that you can go into labor and that they want to be there for you. So like there's that. There's the possibility that they're going to lose an entire night's sleep, which I personally had 2 overnight births, and it took a long time to
It's a
recover
few
from
days to make
that.
up for that one
You
missed
know, so
night.
it's not just like, oh, well, if I'm only in labor for 8 hours, then my doula is only working 8 hours. And if you divide, you know, $1,000 by 8 hours, wow, they're making a lot hourly. That's not how to think about it
No,
at
there's a lot of
all.
the prenatal work. We usually, you know,
You
depending on your
meet,
doula, you
right.
come,
That's
we do
right.
a meeting beforehand. We learn your
Yes.
preferences. We'll
Yes.
teach you some tricks.
Exactly.
And then,
Exactly.
yeah, you know, after you have like a prenatal appointment, you're like, hey,
Yeah.
wait, they said this. I'm not so clear on that. Like,
Right. You're
you know, we spend
texting.
time on the phone with you. You're always
Totally.
welcome to reach out to us. Like I said, we're a tutor during birth. We're also a tutor and, you know, even a personal assistant during your pregnancy. If you have questions about car seat recommendations,
Right. Texture
I can help
doula.
you out with that. If you're trying to find an acupuncturist who's got like a
Right.
good
Right.
reputation for prenatal,
Right. That's right.
I've got sources that I can get you.
That's
You know,
right.
we're constantly in
Right.
touch,
There's
constantly
so much
looking
more
at
to
each
it
other.
than like just the birth itself.
Oh yeah.
Like really, it's so true.
For sure.
Okay. So let me just see. We got a question. One second.
Lauren, can we do lunch again? Like, I just love talking to you. This is so
Sure. This is so fun. I could talk about birth all day. Okay. Do doulas have the option of staying for a few hours past the birth, not including the standard hour or two? I feel like that time period for me has been terrible for a variety of reasons and would have loved my doula to be there for longer of that post-delivery time.
Okay, so for sure, if that's something that's a concern, then be in touch with your doula. Like, I think the sooner the better, and let them know that that's a goal of yours.
Okay.
It normally should be fine. For sure, we like to stay during that 1 to 2 hour period, because we do want to make sure that if you're planning on breastfeeding, you have good latch. You might be absolutely exhausted. You know, if you've been laboring through the night, you and your husband could be so tired, and your baby might be hysterical crying, and you know, you're not in your postpartum room yet where there's a nursery available. It's just you guys. So like, I've just sat there holding a baby, trying to keep the baby from crying while like the couple literally fell asleep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's happened more than once, actually. It was fun. But yeah, so, you know, we want to be there for you. There's still, you know, the logistics, you know, behind like, okay, like, all right, it's 1 o'clock and they had their baby. My kids come home at 4 o'clock. Do I need to get a babysitter lined up, or will I be home by 4 o'clock? So if I know beforehand that you know, this couple needs those few extra hours,
yeah,
I should be able to arrange that. But then at 1 o'clock, I'll know, okay, I'm not going to be home at 4 o'clock, even though it's only 1 o'clock. Let me, you know, like hit up this person and this person and this person, see who's going to take which child.
Right.
Yeah, so just communicate. Always communicate with your doula.
Yeah. So the short answer is, yeah, it could be an option if that's important.
But be in touch. Like,
you just need to figure it out.
Don't just throw it on the doula, because like, we have to have, you know, everything on. We're you know, not every doula, but like, I've got little kids at home, so like, I have to have every single thing planned. Planning, lots of planning.
Totally. Okay, let's get into some of the. I have a list on my computer next to me. Let's get into some of the. I don't know what to call it. Hesitations, questions, concerns, things that are holding people back from potentially hiring a doula. I made a list, and we worked on this, you know, Yael and I were like texting back and forth today, so I'm just looking at my list. Okay, so I want an epidural. Do I still really need a doula? I can take this one since you spoke a lot. So I want an epidural. Do I still really need a doula? And I think, you know, just from what we've talked about so far in this conversation, it's pretty clear that a doula is providing more than just physical support during contractions that are uncomfortable or painful or
and
intense,
that question
whatever you want
kind
to call
of is the assumption that a doula is just there to address pain. Like it,
That's
like right. It's like, oh, I have the epidural, so do I need the doula? That like, it's a one or the other. Yeah,
that's right. So that's operating under the assumption that the doula's only role there is to, you know, work with you during the contractions. Now, obviously, that is one part of their role, but there's a lot more to birth than just whether you get the epidural or not. I'm reflecting back on my own like first pregnancy, and like going into it, I really had this sense of this like dichotomy of like, there's two types of births, epidural and no epidural births. And now, fortunately, I've matured and realized that is so not true. But I think a lot of people also like do fall into that thinking, which makes sense because, you know, that seems to be a huge decision around your birth. But if you still get an epidural, if you're planning on getting an epidural rather, it is still very valuable to have a doula by your side for all the reasons that we mentioned. They can continue to provide you with information, suggestions when you get your epidural to help the birth progress more quickly. They can just help you feel more comfortable. They're providing that emotional support. You know, if are things that are coming up and you need to make decisions around interventions, they're still going to be there to help walk you through that process, whether you have an epidural or not. So I think that epidural and doula are not mutually exclusive.
Sure. Also, it's like heartbreaking when this happens, because like, I want people to have what they want, but epidurals don't always work for everyone so well. So, you know, someone has an epidural and then half of their body's numb, or they can still feel like their upper thigh and they're having like major cramping in there, they're comfortable.
Yeah.
that
One of my
happens.
clients had that.
And they still need
Yeah,
a lot of, physical comfort and stuff like that.
totally. For sure.
And then
For
also, like,
sure.
we now have to defy gravity, for sure. If you're unmedicated, you have the ability to be upright. Once you have the
Right.
epidural, your provider's going to want you to pretty much stay in bed. So how do we still make the baby come down? So
Baby
there's
comes
stuff that a
down.
doula can
Right.
do. Exactly. You don't
Uh-huh.
have to just like lay there and just like
Lay
let it
there
take as
and be
much
passive.
as it needs.
Yeah.
Because mind you, once you have an epidural, you could possibly get a fever from it.
Mm-hmm.
If a laboring mom has a fever and if her water is broken, there's no way to know if that fever is caused by an epidural or by a uterine infection.
Right.
So we need to prioritize what's best for the baby at that point, and baby would need to come out, and that may be a surgical birth.
Oh, wow.
So you don't want to just have the epidural and lay there and just do nothing and let time take its course. Because you don't want to get a fever. So we're going to also
there's a lot of other factors.
Like there's
that come into play.
Exactly. There's
not
a whole
just
bunch
the
of like all
epidural.
these hidden little things.
Yeah. I call it like, don't put all your eggs in the epidural basket. Like,
Well,
it's just, you're so right. Like the fever thing, like navigating that, if it's not working.
These small things that, no provider is going to bring, like your anesthesiologist isn't like bringing up that factor to you when they're getting, when you're signing the consent form. But that's something you should know. Like, be aware that can happen. And it happened to me during one of my births. And they were like, okay, we're just going to prep you that we're going to be taking your baby to the NICU. I'm like, wait. Like, because of the fever from my epidural, like, well, because we don't know. It's like, but like, just trust me, okay? And like, it happens.
Yeah. So let's go on with this list because I have like 8 things and we're already at 9:10. Okay. Ready? All right. What would you say to someone who thinks it'll be weird to have another person there? I've heard this is also pretty common. How would you respond to that question?
That's funny. I guess people have made up their minds that they want to do it by the time they speak to me. So, I never really gotten that question.
Yeah.
But think about all the other strangers coming in your room. Like, your doctor is not on call that night, so you're meeting a new person for the first time. Your nurse is probably fantastic, but you don't have a relationship with her. You have a relationship with your doula by the time they come into the room. It's well, I mean, there definitely are times where I've just like come into the room and like literally like someone went into labor and called me if I can come, or backing up another doula and you literally come in the room and introduce yourself.
And you're new.
That's not the norm. It usually is someone who's very close with you already at that point. But we also we read the room. We know how you feel lying in that bed. We want to respect your privacy. We want to respect all of your feelings and emotions at that time. Like we know when it's time to like move our chair back and just sit in the corner. We know when it's time to bring it forward and give you like a foot massage and just like talk to you. We can read the room.
You're emotionally intelligent.
There's going to be a lot of strangers in that room. The doula is the only one who's employed by you and who only owes you their, we should call it allegiance. Like, I don't know, that makes it sound like there's like a whole battle going on. It's not a battle. But just like it's the only person who's paid by you and who works for you and who is prioritizing you as opposed to policy and all the other stuff that
they're totally on your team. Yeah, I love that. Okay.
That would be a lot.
And like also, I love what you said about that. Like they know what to do based on how you're feeling. And like I think the energy.
I don't want someone touching me when this is happening. I want you here when this is happening.
Right. And you could communicate that, beforehand, whether you like physical touch, whether you don't like physical touch.
And also like
you want them to just sit there.
We're not insulted if like in the middle of a contraction a mom says, "Oh no," like you've got it. Like
you can't read their
minds like that.
For sure. And like I think that where this like concern is coming from is from a very important intuitive sense that women have of like being watched while you're in labor is probably like the also worst thing you could do for labor progress.
You feel very vulnerable at that time. But, mind you, that's another perk of a doula is that it's like your ally who kind of gets where you're coming from. Like I remember like my thigh was uncovered after an exam and like I had my epidural like lying there. I'm like,
covered you.
There's maybe been like 10 people in the last 10 years who have seen my thigh. Here, like if I see a thigh, I'm covering that thigh. Like if you're my pop,
I had a similar
I'll ask you if you want me to, fix it back up. And your nurse is totally sensitive to that feeling that you're having, but she doesn't know exactly what
know
you need. Whereas, like,
no, for sure. And like I think with the doula being there, like they're not like watching you like a watched pot. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
the
No, we
saying
just
like a
want you to
watched
feel
pot doesn't
protected.
boil. Like someone who's
Yeah.
being like observed in labor, like their labor is going to stall. Like that's just like a physiologic thing that happens. But when the doula's presence is not one of watching, it's one of just giving and making space for you. So I think that's
So
just like
it's interesting that you say that, because during my doula trainer was at a childbirth education course, and it was with a bunch of couples. It wasn't like a Jewish group. The instructor said,
yeah.
okay, to all the
My
husbands.
classes are mostly Jewish couples. Just saying, it's couples also.
No, no, but this was like an in-person. You'll hear the
Yeah,
example
I
I'm about
got
to
you.
say, and you'll understand why
Yeah.
I mentioned that. So the instructor said, okay, all the men, I've put a
Oh
bottle
yeah.
in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
And whoever can pee in it
Yeah.
first is the winner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there were a couple of men who were like, yeah, I could do that. And they couldn't pee because people were watching them. And
They
they were
volunteered to
self-conscious.
do it.
Yeah,
Oh
there's
my
always those few people who are like, I get this, you can't not be that person. And they
Right.
couldn't pee. They
Right.
couldn't do it because
Right.
there were tons of sets of eyes on them.
Right.
Um,
Birth is
and
like that.
we expect women to labor and give birth with all eyes
Yeah.
on them, when really your doula wants to protect your space.
That's
And
right.
when you're having an exam, we stand up by your head. We don't want you to feel like
Right.
you have those eyes on you, and we'll hold your hand. And we hold the drape up sometimes, like if we see your husband's passing by and we know that he doesn't want to
Yeah.
see too much of you, like
Right.
we want you to feel protected and safe.
100%.
That's one of our priorities.
Yes. I love that. Okay. That's a really great way to address that.
I just loved that story when
The
she said it. I was
perspective.
like,
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What about, okay. I've heard this a number of times too. I heard the nurses in my are amazing in my hospital, and my OB said I don't need a doula.
Okay.
Do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
I'm just curious. Did you know of like the whole hawk that went down? Like, what was it, like a week or two ago with this exact question?
Oh no, this is just something I've heard like over the years.
Oh,
like,
okay, yeah, no, it's a very popular question. For sure, if you want to go for it.
I don't know about the hawk, but we could talk offline.
Okay.
I want to. I'll go first because I don't want to keep putting you on the hot seat. The nurses, so labor and delivery nurses are awesome and really, like, I believe like got into this line of work because they want to be there to help the moms in labor.
So true. Like they're so passionate. They love what they do.
Oh yeah. And the births that I've been to and my own birth experiences, I really had, generally speaking, overall really good experiences with the nurses in labor and delivery. The main thing that concerns me about this hesitation in hiring a doula is that the roles are just so different. And I think it's unfair to expect your nurse to replace the role of the doula. So the role of your nurse in your birth is to do the medical care that's related to your labor and delivery. Whereas Yael said at the beginning of this live, doulas don't do anything medical. So a labor and delivery nurse is responsible for making sure that your vitals look good. They're responsible for making sure that you're being monitored appropriately. Your baby's heart rate is being monitored appropriately. If you need IV fluids, they're responsible for administering those. If you need any medications, they're responsible for administering those. And
then they have to leave the room and go chart about it for a while.
Right. And they're also responsible exactly for charting and documenting and writing things down. And in many hospitals, they're not assigned with one-to-one care, meaning they're not only assigned to you, they're also responsible for doing all those things I just mentioned, and probably more things I didn't even mention, for another person in labor as well. So they have a lot on their plate, and they might really be the type who like wants to be there to support you and like offer, position changes and show you different tricks, but they're just not able to be there in the same way to provide continuous support like a doula can. So continuous support means someone with you the entire time, which is what a doula does, whereas a nurse is going to be in the room and out of the room, in the room and out of the room, watching the fetal heart rate monitor and your contraction monitor, likely on a computer screen, and she's in charge of more than one person at a time. So to expect, your nurse might be the best nurse in America in labor and delivery, right? But to expect her to fulfill that role that a doula is going to play is just an unfair expectation. So, when people say this, I just hesitate because I don't want people to go in with the expectation that, oh, I don't need to hire a doula. My nurse is going to be my doula, and then get there and then be lacking the support that they really were hoping to get because they set themselves up for, just unrealistic expectations.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and not all hospitals are created equal. There definitely are some hospitals where you are in much better hands. And like, if someone's on the fence about a doula, I'll say like, look, it does happen to be, you have the best nurses that I've seen in New York.
Yeah.
But also something to add, just because of this actual incident, I guess we'll call it that, happened at a recent birth. Who does your nurse work for?
The hospital.
Who is your nurse's coworker? The
Another
OB.
nurse.
The OB.
Right.
So if the OB suggests something
right.
that the mother doesn't want, can the nurse tell her? Will the nurse tell her that, oh, this is optional? Oh, you
right.
don't really have to do this. Oh, I don't mind telling the OB that you said no.
She's in a sticky situation.
She's in a sticky situation, and you can't blame her because
right.
this is her coworker that she has to have a good relationship with.
Right.
This is the hospital who mandates policies for her. Just because there's a hospital, just because there's a hospital policy, it doesn't mean the mom has to follow that policy. It's the policy for the nurse to try to implement the policy.
Right.
And so a doula can, and this incident that happened, like the nurse was completely on mine and the mom's side, and like, okay, I'll play bad cop. Like, someone has to be the bad cop. Let me be it. Like, I'm making sure my client gets what my client wants.
Right.
So that's also a huge difference. Again, like we said before, your nurse, as fantastic as they are, works for your hospital.
Yeah, so true. Someone brought in a comment and she said, oh my God, the idea of a nurse being equated to a doula is actually making me LOL. No disrespect to nurses, but they've made my experiences worse in the past. Others have made it better, but doulas are where the support is at. So I really sorry you had that experience. And, this is another point that
I just want you to know that you're allowed to fire your nurse. Never accept that. Like, it's have your husband go and speak to the charge nurse and get yourself a new nurse. You should never feel like, oh, I'm so sorry that you had that.
You could switch. But I think this is also just another point which is important for people to think about, is that with the nurse, like I was saying, I really do believe that like vast majority got into this field because they really want to help, but it's also just luck of the draw. So like you can show up and you can get like a cranky nurse, not all professionals are created equal, just like not all doulas are created equal. Right. But at least with your doula, you have the ability to choose, like what you were saying before, like you have the ability in a relationship with this person beforehand, and they're going to be with you no matter what. Whereas with the nurse, like it's like rolling the dice. I personally, like I had by my first birth, like I was not happy with the nurses at all. Second birth, I like love this woman. Third, it was like a mix. So it's just like you never really know what you're gonna get, and so that's also just a risk. And some people are okay with that risk, and some people might be like, "Oh, I don't want that. I want to know who I'm getting."
But even if you're taking that risk, people don't know that you could fire your nurse. You can fire your nurse,
and exactly to your point, if you're not happy,
nurse and get yourself a new nurse. You are allowed to do that.
Yes. That's a great pro tip.
That's like the one thing that every birthing mother should know.
Yes, I do talk about that in my class. Like, you're a paying customer at the hospital, you deserve to have the experience that you want.
Yes, for sure.
So I want to open it up to questions. If people have questions, you could put it in like the comments or like the little bubble with the question mark in it. Yael, is there anything else that we didn't get to that you wanted to include? Oh, hi, Sippy. Shout out to Lauren, best doula ever. Thanks, Sippy.
Oh, it's so cute.
Oh, you're so cute. Yes. So
I want to add, I think, just be very open and honest with your doula, with who you're interviewing, when you're looking for a doula. I know we were talking about this earlier, like, should I hire a doula? Does everybody need a doula?
Right.
I don't think everyone needs a doula. It really might not be for you, and that's okay. It's okay if that, it's still sticking out to you, like, I really don't want an extra person in, in my birthing room. That's completely valid.
Yeah.
But you will really benefit from a doula.
Right.
everyone can benefit from a doula.
Yeah.
It's an advocate. It's someone who's there to support you.
Yeah.
There are, if you like Google, like, should I hire a doula? You'll come
Yeah.
across some studies,
Right. I actually
about
pulled
the
up
benefits.
evidence-based birth in preparation for this call. You don't have to
Exactly.
take Yael's word for it that everyone will benefit from a doula. There's research supporting that
It was a study with
doulas,
like 1,500 women or
yeah.
something, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it was a nice sized group.
Exactly. They lower your chance of having a cesarean, and other interventions increase your chance of having a more positive birth experience. So there are like actually like research backed benefits to hiring a doula, and that's really awesome because it's not just like, oh, this feels good and like
Right.
maybe it'll help me. There's like real like research.
And now, but mind you, there's also there are some technical parts about that study. One of them is that you have continuous support. So
Right?
like we said about before, like, oh, I have great nurses. Do I need a doula? Those statistics are only valid when you have continuous support. So your doula, once she comes with you, is staying with you, obviously,
Yeah.
like a 5-minute bathroom break, running to grab a coffee. We're not talking something like that, but we're talking about like a nurse who's like in and out. You're not going to have the same, you're not going to have the same, what's the word? I didn't have a coffee yet.
Continuity.
Yeah. Like you're not going to have the same continuity, and then you're not going to have the same results. So, it's something to think about when you look at those statistics.
Yeah.
It's specifically for a doula, not just like a regular support person.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You're so right. Okay. Comments. Probably would have had a C-section if it wasn't for your support.
I believe it. There is
that
so
was an
much
intense birth. And if I wasn't there, and also if this person was with a different OB in a different hospital, then things probably would have panned out differently. That's the truth also. And a doula can really help you, with navigating the system in which people are birthing in the hospital system. It's complicated. It's complicated. So to have someone Oh yeah, I'm curious what you think of this analogy. So this is obviously how my brain works. The other day I was driving from Woodmere to Far Rockaway. So anyone who's from the Five Towns knows how fun that is, like at 3:00 in the afternoon with all the traffic. And so I like to put on Google Maps because I like to like see the live traffic. I happen to know the back way, which doesn't show up on Google Maps. So on Google Maps, I put in, Woodmere to my destination, Far Rockaway, and it shows like red, like 18 minutes or whatever, tons of traffic. And I'm like, I'm going to go the back way. So I start going the back way. It's not even like showing up on Google Maps until like I get to, how like it doesn't show up until you like get to a certain point. And it's like, oh, you found the secret way. So like I'm going the back way, and then it goes down to like green 12 minutes. And like I had this like idea in my head, because obviously all I think about is birth. Like, this is what it's like when you have a doula versus when you don't. You can show up to the hospital and they're going to give you like that red trafficy way. Like, here's like the standard way to go. Here's like the obvious way to do things. Like, you show up, you get continuous monitoring, you get IV fluids,
if you have an epidural,
you're going to have to be in bed. What'd you say?
You're going to have Pitocin.
And none of these things are bad in and of themselves. It's just like a standard way that hospitals
you might have opinions on them, and you might feel like you don't have the option to say no if it's something you want.
That's right. They're just giving you like the standard, right? Just like Google Maps, they're giving me like the standard route. But going the back way, right? That's like having a doula. Like, they know like how to like get
also,
you.
like, there are some hospitals that we've been at like over a dozen times. Like, we know exactly what your OB is gonna say. The second your strip starts to look like this, and then things are gonna be rushed and this and that.
Right. That's right. So like the the secret way, the back way, which I think is so valuable, and I think that's an often ignored aspect of the birth. Like, you think about like, okay, what's the big deal? Like, I'm just in labor, my body knows how to birth my baby, and that is 100% true. And you're also birthing in an environment that sometimes / oftentimes isn't able to individualize that care to you, because they're seeing so many people, right? Because it's just standard policies and procedures. And so having a doula is this way to like, no, I want to take the back way. Like, it's going to get me to the same result, right? Like, we all want to have a baby at the end. We all want to like get to Far Rockaway at the end.
Not that there's a guarantee,
but like, it could be more pleasurable and easier. Sorry,
it's not like it's not like there's any guarantees with hiring a doula that you're for sure going to have the birth of your dreams.
No.
But it's another way of showing that, like, you really are trying. you
Yeah.
know, to have, you know, whatever you want to avoid, whatever you want to be able to do,
Yeah.
that you're hopefully going to have the birth that you want. But then
Yeah.
again, birth itself is dangerous. It does have risks, and it can change like that. You know,
100%.
and say it does, and say you do have a C-section. Do you feel like you wasted your money because you hired a doula? No, you know,
Right.
you labored. And sometimes you learn so much
Right.
from the fact that you labored, you
Right.
know, like
Right.
say you wanted then a VBAC for your next birth.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know that it wasn't something about your body and stalling, and you know,
Right.
maybe it was like a
Right.
heart rate issue, and you know that you're a good candidate now for a VBAC because
Right.
your body
Right.
does what it needs to do.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah. Someone posted that in my stories like a few days ago. And also, I think if someone's birth ends in a C-section, they were hoping to avoid a C-section. I mean, don't you think that if they had a doula there that was like walking them through the whole process, like leading up to a C-section, you know, most C-sections are not like stat emergencies, right? There might be signs. So your doula might say to you, you know, hey, I just want to make sure you realize, like, you know, you're obese, expressing concerns about your baby's heart rate. That might mean a C-section. Do you mind if I suggest some things that we could do, you know, to try to get labor going? And they could sort of like give you the heads up
yeah.
of like, this is like coming up. So you don't, this is my like personal philosophy. Like, I feel so strongly that it's like your birth experience is like how you're processing what's happening to you. It's not just what's happening like on paper. So if
Right.
someone's birth is ending in a C-section but they feel like, I totally understand why that happened, and my doula helped coach me along the way. That person, they might be disappointed that they had a C-section, especially if they were hoping for a vaginal birth, but they're gonna feel less, you know, rumination of, oh, what if I did that? Or what if this was different? Or what if I had a doula? Or what if I asked that question, you know? So like having a doula, no matter how your birth unfolds, can actually help you just feel more at peace with whatever ends up, you know, coming up for you. Yeah, go ahead.
And so actually, a majority of the births that I were in that ended in C-sections, those ones actually were emergencies, where like all of a sudden, like, okay, like,
Uh-huh.
you know, call trauma, and then, you know, 9 people come in the room and the baby's out within 9 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So
You got unlucky.
think about the husband though at that
Right.
moment.
Right. Also that.
Yeah, because when it's an emergency C-section, the husband is usually not going to be there for the birth or for like all the, you know, the
Pre-op.
until the baby is coming out. They don't want the husband
Uh-huh.
in there. The mom is usually at that point put under general anesthesia, so they really don't want any extra support people
Uh-huh.
in there. Or not a doula in there because, you know,
Right.
why would we let doulas anywhere in the hospital, especially because COVID? Whatever. I have opinions about it. I don't know if you can tell. But so now the husband just saw, you know, 10, 15 people come in the room, whisk the wife away as they heard the heart rate monitor drop. Sometimes you still see the heart rate, you know,
terrified,
going like that, and then all of a sudden it's like that. They all just leave a husband in the room.
Yeah. He doesn't know.
So now there's someone to talk to the husband, explain to the husband exactly what we think may have happened, give reassurance, because very often, you know, these monitors will pick something up, and it's like, you know, they'll pick it up as it's like starting ish to happen, and like, thank God the babies are usually that I've been at, you know, where it's been like a stat C-section. The babies have good, healthy APGAR scores. You know, like the babies do, thank God, come out fine. And, you know, obviously the fathers are thinking the worst when this happens. And it's not that it means the worst is happening to your baby. It means you're having a C-section because your baby needs to be born now in order to hopefully continue being a healthy baby. So, you know, we go through stuff like that, but then also remember, a hospital is a business. So as much as they're sympathetic to the fact that your wife just got whisked away, they still are going to make you pack your room up. So that's hard for you to now, like, while your wife is in surgery, like, okay, I'm going to change and like put on the scrub thing, and then I have to like pack all my bags. So like, okay, you take it, like you brace yourself. You're going to be going soon to meet your child. Let me pack up for you. And then, like, you know, I'll tell them, like, okay, all like husband, all your stuff, I think I put in there. Wife, I think all of your stuff is put in there. I'm not sure whose these slippers are, but they're over there. So, you know, pack up and bring everything into recovery for them. Sometimes the doula is allowed. Sometimes the doula is not allowed. When we are allowed, you know, think about it. If you want to try to breastfeed, you have an incision on your abdomen. You might need some modified positioning. We can help you with that. So it's not like it ends just because you had a C-section.
A C-section. Totally. It's not an end all be all. 100%. I'm so glad you brought that up. And with a couple minutes left, we didn't really talk about husbands. Can you talk about some ways that you involve husbands that, you know, want to be more involved in the birth. Because I think the common concern also is like husbands feeling like they're going to be take a step
No, I
back.
keep the
Husbands
busy.
feeling like they're going to be sidelined. Like they,
Oh,
you know, they want to, let's say someone really they want to feel like, you know, they want to feel involved because it's their child, right?
yeah,
And it's
no,
their
for sure.
wife and they want to be supportive. And I think oftentimes husbands might not know what to do. But no one wants to feel pushed to the side in the birth of their own baby. So how does a doula like fit into that whole
Yeah.
dynamic
So
when it comes to the
I
step?
give husbands like a handout. I forgot who, I didn't write them, but they're like the types of like words of affirmation, like things you can say to your spouse, like encouraging things. And just like I discuss with them, like, you know, a helpful way to speak, you know, say it's during a contraction, you want to really have rhythm. So say, you're doing great. You know, keep that up and just like teach them that technique, especially if they're going to be the one doing that first half of labor. I want to teach them how to be the best support person that they can. So I give them this little sheet. I also point out to them that on the sheet, it does not say anything like, wow, I'm happy I'm not a woman. Wow, thank God I'm not you. We don't say things like that. That's not helpful for anyone. So yeah, just kind of like prepping them to be that primary support person and, you know, be there for their wife at the beginning of labor.
Yeah.
And then also they are the priority. So, you know, like there's usually the big fancy chair that reclines, you know, next to the wife's head. That's the husband's, you know, like you two talk to each other because oxytocin is what keeps your contractions going.
Right.
Oxytocin is the love hormone.
Right.
If your husband's talking to you and you're speaking and you're seeing his face, you're helping labor progress. So as a doula, you want to keep that relationship going and functioning, keep them communicating. But you know, that's also a perk is that say the husband needs to go get a coffee, go to the bathroom, grab something to eat.
Right. Take a nap.
You know, he's not leaving the wife alone.
Totally.
You know, when he does all of that because let me tell you, some husbands had work to do while their wife was in labor.
Yeah, I had that also with my birth. Yeah.
And so that was a little bit lonely.
A little lonely. Like, I'm like, please get off your phone.
In the room, but like the back of the phone on the laptop, okay? Like he came prepared.
Oh man.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I have a picture of my husband on his lap.
I totally understood that he needed dinner and that the Bikor Cholim room was like a 10-minute walk away, but like I don't know, I've been starving for 20 hours.
I could tell you felt a little bit isolated during that experience and you hope that other people don't have that experience.
Exactly. So like, I think the husbands appreciate that like they don't have to, not that they have to feel guilty, but like that they don't feel bad leaving their wife so that they can do whatever they need to do, daven, anything, knowing that someone's in there and that say things go crazy. Like, okay, I have your cell phone number. I will call you if things start to change. You're going to go daven. That's fine. Keep your phone on loud. I'll be in touch with you.
Right.
So
that's such a good point. Yeah. Like to just have that backup and like you're working together. Everyone's on the same team of like supporting the person in labor and you know the husbands have a very unique role of like they know that they know their wife more intimately than anyone else in the room.
For sure.
And the doula is there to like I love what you said about the oxytocin. Like you're there to like facilitate that and maximize that relationship. And
you don't want to come in between that. That's gonna help labor. And then like that's the father of the child. Like as soon as like it seems like, you know, the baby's about to come out, like I take out the camera and like get some good pictures of the mom. I love getting like pictures of the husband crying for the first time. Oh, that's the best. That's the best. So sweet. So yeah, like really making that like their moment, you know, just back and just the two of them next to each other. You know, very often the husbands will be like a little bit farther back, just, you know, genius reason. But like, you know, once the baby's coming out, okay, like let me hold, you know, you have like that extra towel on you anyway, so you're more covered. So like, let me move, let your husband come right over here.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it's your time.
Be the parents. Yeah, for 100%. Sure.
I love it.
So respectful of that. We love the couple relationship.
Awesome. Okay, well, Yael, thank you so much for having this chat with me. I'm sure we could keep going, but we're gonna keep it on the short side, so we probably go for like 4 more hours. Where can people find you?
So I have an Instagram page that I like to share some tips and information, the doula _ Yael Segelman. My cell phone number's there if you ever need a text, if you need referrals, anything, DM me.
Awesome.
You know, I love to help. So
thanks so much. This was a great conversation. Thank you everyone for joining, for your great questions. I just want to say one quick thing, which is that one question which we did not get to was around postpartum doulas versus like baby nurses, but I think postpartum doula support is going to have to be its own live. So To be continued. But anyway, thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully this cleared up some questions. If you have more questions, you can DM me, you could DM Yael. You could post, this will be recorded, so you could post your questions in the comments because other people might be wondering the same thing. But thank you so much for joining, and have a great night. And if you're expecting, Bishara Tova.
Love that. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.